There was another big report that came out recently about how titans of industry like Elon Musk pay very little, if any, federal income tax, and how that's a terrible thing for the United States and Western society. Today, I'm going to weigh in on the latest report naming and shaming billionaires for not paying their fair share. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this book, available on Amazon, and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you're treated best. That includes how to reduce your tax bill by living and doing business overseas, how to get a second passport to protect yourself from wealth-grabbing politicians, how to invest in new markets that welcome you rather than repel you. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Now, it came out. Jeff Bezos seems to be a fan favorite for the tax and spend crowd to target. Elon Musk now in the crosshairs, allegedly, the report says, paying $0 in federal income tax in 1 year. Now, the beautiful thing about the way that I live is as someone who is no longer attached in any way through physical presence, through living, through residence, or through citizenship in a high-tax legacy brain country, I don't have to care. I'm talking about this because you may be watching from a high-tax legacy brand country and you want to figure out, what does this mean to me? And it's fodder for the discussion, but I don't spend too much time worrying about it because I believe that even in the talk of global minimum tax and all that, there are still going to be places, there are still going to be ways for you to go where you're treated best, because there still will be countries that, unlike countries run by the likes of Elizabeth Warren or other wealth-grabbing politicians, want you to come, want you to bring your money, want you to bring your talents. So here's a headline. One of the reports, it's hard to keep up with all these reports, but one of the groups that put out these reports was called ProPublica. And there was a quote in an article on MarketWatch that says, Warren Buffett, the chief executive and chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, of course, has avoided the most tax, according to the ProPublica Trove, paying a tax rate of 0.1% on $24.3 billion in wealth he accumulated between 2014 and 2018. And then in parentheses, taxes are assessed on income rather than wealth. It should be noted, because of course they are. I saw another article somewhere from Mark Cuban, where they interviewed Mark Cuban, and he was saying, you know, Mark Cuban's not exactly a low-tax guy. He says, hey, tax me more of my income. But he says, I was talking to people who were putting together the Elizabeth Warren wealth tax provision on net wealth, and I'm saying, okay, I don't have a lot of liquidity. This is Mark Cuban speaking. What do? I've got to sell assets. Okay, what if those assets, go down in value? Do I get part of my wealth, my tax back? Or what if, the market moves? They're like, how do you work all this stuff out? And they said, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. We haven't considered that at all. We just want the headlines of coming and saying these people need to pay more because the government's done such a bad job running the economy. I mean, don't know the government running the economy, but they've done such a bad job in particular in the last 30 to 40 years that now you've got Americans and other Westerners in some cases who have stagnant wages. This year you have inflation going crazy, and people are upset. And so the politicians have to respond either to keep their jobs or to come into and ascend to power by finding a scapegoat. Nobody's really concerned about Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, but the very fact that they're talking about how we added $24.3 billion of wealth and only paid 0.1%, that's not how we tax things. So that's not how you tax things. Forget we. That's not how you guys in the Western world tax things. So what if he generated some wealth? If he didn't sell anything, what's the issue? Those are the rules they make. Now, they want to use it as a reason to say, let's tax wealth, but why would he pay based on the basis of wealth if he didn't have any income? We're talking about income tax, how people don't pay enough income tax, and then they shift it to wealth. Does the average person catch that? I'm guessing not. Now, I will say this. I choose to leave the United States first and foremost, long before I figured out the tax component, because I felt like it was a big world out there, never particularly liked living in the U.S., thought there were a lot of business opportunities, loved the rush of traveling all around the world, and decided to make it a lifestyle. As I got into that, that's where Nomad Capitalist was born, the realization that, okay, well, what do you do about taxes if you don't live in the country? Oh, interesting, right? And that became what is Nomad Capitalist. So, as I've gone through this process, and as I've been a consumer of living overseas, I have benefited from being able to greatly reduce my taxes. And now I've even greatly reduced my filings, by virtue of leaving the U.S. For good. Again, not the reason necessarily that I would do that, but, a side benefit. I will push back on some of the extreme libertarians. I don't mean to say extreme in a bad way, but I will push back on the people who are very vocal, let's say, about, well, taxes, theft, and who cares about Elon Musk? Good for him. Yeah, sure, good for him. If he's doing it legally and he's taking advantage of the laws, I'm all for it. That said, I will, to be the devil's advocate, say, listen, you live in the United States. There's a deal where taxes are not particularly low there. That is what society has decided is appropriate. They vote for politicians that want to raise taxes. That's the general trajectory of the country. That's the general trend. The culture is becoming more anti-capitalist, anti-business. It used to be you'd point at the guy in the Rolls Royce and say, look at that guy, he built a company. Now you point and you spit at him and people, you put a guillotine in front of the guy's house. The country has changed. And so to a certain extent, I say, if you want to live in a country, you kind of have to say, this is the deal. I don't do the stay and fight thing. You're going to go and you're going to vote. You're not going to vote. The country's gone against you. Your one vote's not going to matter in a sea of people who want to, the blood of billionaires and the millionaires and billionaires. So, to a certain extent, taxes are going to go up on people in the West. I think everyone understands that. And so if you want to stay in the West, be prepared. We're here telling you about alternatives. And so, whether you like it or not, your countrymen are saying, we want you to pay more. Now, what I do think is it's uncharacteristically fair to go after these people because ProPublica and others, all they want is the headlines. They want to go out and say Warren Buffett paid 0.1% of his wealth and just skew the debate. So if Elon Musk can legally pay zero because he followed the laws, listen, the politicians made the laws. Trump said this. I don't agree with everything Trump did, but Trump said this in the debates. I went back for my own entertainment, a month or so ago, and I was watching one of the Trump-Hillary debates. Very entertaining stuff. And he said, listen, if I paid so little, what were you doing in office for so long not changing the laws? There's some validity to that. Now, again, the Elizabeth Warrens come out and say, well, then great, we're going to change the laws, and then they're going to make it miserable. And so, after all these years, I think that it's going to become worse because the politician's going to come and hit back just to basically make a point. But the politicians make the rules. I'm not going to blame Elon Musk, again, allegedly, for paying what he did, or for Jeff Bezos or whatever. Here's the other thing I'm going to say. I think that the consensus was that their estimation was Elon Musk paid 3.27% over the course of a 4 or 5 year period, something like that. To which I say, again, it's not this 24.3 billion number, or whatever his version of the number is that counts. It's how much income he made. I don't know what the income is. But I can tell you 3.27% of a lot is a lot more than some guy in, Texarkana who paid $5,000 based on a household income of 67 grand. And this is one thing that I do get frustrated with. The population is by definition average. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not upset about it. God bless everyone who's in the population. But there is, not by definition, but just naturally as human beings, people don't understand things that are totally different. They don't want to understand generally. And so if you're making $67,000 a year in your household in Texarkana or Wichita or Adelaide or Birmingham or whatever, you probably don't understand what it's like to be the guy making $100 million a year or whatever it is. And I bet if you did make $100 million a year, you'd probably want to pay 3.727% of it as well. But it's hard for you to understand that now. And so all these people who pay the $5,000 get upset that Elon Musk, is just an example, pays 3% of many millions, which is a lot more than what they pay. He's not driving on any more roads necessarily. He's not sending 27,000 of his kids to school. He's using the same services in the same measure as many other people. Maybe his companies use some of that more, but his companies are separate. He as an individual can only drive on one road at a time, can only use one government service or at a time. And it does bother me in the sense that people go out and they're like, I pay my taxes and so should you. Yeah, you paid $5,000, right? The guy who makes $100 million or $10 million, you want him to pay $5 million. Big difference. He's not using any more. Really, you know what the fairest system of tax in my estimation would be? You figure out, all right, here's the budget. And here's your family's share. Oh, you got kids? Okay, they're at a discount, like Disney World tickets. They get a discount. And hey, The more people in your family, the more you pay as your fair share, and we all use the services equally, and maybe then people would want to fight back against the bloated budgets. But they don't. Look at the budget deficits they're running. Look at all the money they're printing all over the Western world recently. So the issue really isn't Elon Musk's alleged 0% tax rate or what Warren Buffett paid or what any of these guys paid. It's convenient for these think tanks to go around insulting Jeff Bezos and doing really violent things, quite frankly, making violent threats against people like him and really ginning up the public against him. I can tell you this, if I'm a highly successful person and I'm in the public eye, I probably don't want to be living in the Western world right now, because if things get worse, there could become more of a physical threat. It could become more personal. I've already heard from more people than ever in the last year saying this country's going in the wrong direction in terms of, I just feel like I'm the enemy now. It could become a lot worse. And so these groups, they always talk about the right wing. Oh, the right wing, they're putting at this, they're putting at that. It's ginning up hatred. They are ginning up hatred against the wealthy, because you know what? People I'm talking to, they're not paying 0%. They're not paying 3.27%. They're paying 43.27%. It's too much. You think the average person reading this report, this skewed report that tries to switch up wealth and income oh so innocently, you think the average person reading this is going to think that you, the millionaire driving the nice car, you think they're going to realize you pay 43.27% instead of 3%? No. Who knows what that could lead to? So that's my thought. It is a cultural and societal change in a very bad way. So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.